Pulgasari is a kaiju film from Korea. And yes, for once, not South Korea, North Korea. It's very unusual, but this begins with Kim Jong-il. Before he inherited North Korea from his father, he was the cultural arts director in 1978. All he wanted to do was direct movies, but North Korea doesn't really have infrastructure, let alone a film infrastructure, despite what Homefront says. So Jong-il decided to kidnap his favorite actress, Seo Eun-hee, and her ex-husband, the director Shin Sang-ok, who used to make tons of movies together, so Jong-il forced them to get remarried and make movies for him. For the next decade, they made 7 films, including this one. But when they were en route to the Berlin International Film Festival, the two escaped to Vienna, Austria, and made their way to America, getting asylum, and after a few years of break, Sang-ok decided to go back to directing the Three Ninjas sequel and then executive produce the other 2 sequels, and yes, that is Hulk Hogan with short hair because everything is connected. Sunny and Sang-ok rekindled their marriage thanks to shared drama, I guess, remaining together for the rest of their lives and returning to South Korea in 1999. Sang-ok also got a cultural award posthumously. So what about their kaiju film they made in North Korea? The film begins with a big bronze statue, a North Korean staple. Ah, there he is, with the credits. Not Hangul, though. The film begins in a small village where a blacksmith finds out that his best assistant has been stockpiling weapons. It turns out he's the bandit leader and the weapons are for the bandits. Also, he is the blacksmith's nephew. He apologizes because the bandits are really poor. Well, that's good enough, so now the blacksmith's nephew can marry the blacksmith's daughter. I mean, she seems to be into it. I mean, he's got a bit of a Korean Rambo vibe. Probably should also mention that this is actually a period piece set during the Goryeo era. Goryeo is of course where we get the English term Korea from, thanks to people misspelling and mispronouncing it, just like how the Qing dynasty is where we get China from. Then the government officials roll up because they need weapons, but there's a bit of a supply of iron issue. But don't matter, they already ransacked some villagers for their pots and tools, and they're going to do it to this village that's now property of the government. The bandits clash with the government, and it doesn't go well for them. But that night, the people just take back their pots and tools. But now the governor is pissed that he's out of weapon material, so he has the blacksmith arrested. He claims that it was Pulgasari that ate all the tools. But the governor doesn't believe it and has him beaten. Probably should also mention, the film is anglicized to be spelled with a P for Pulgasari, but how they pronounce it for the film and its inspiration should be Bulgasari with a B, which means the impossible to kill or the impossible to kill but can be killed with fire, based on an iron-eating Korean chimera monster, which the Pokemon Aggron is based off of. Also, Bulgasari is the Korean word for starfish. Randomly. Also, this movie is basically a remake of the 1962 South Korean movie, which does spell it with a B, and despite it being important being the first South Korean movie with special effects, it's lost media. So the blacksmith is arrested and starved, which in North Korea is just normal, and the bandits go on a hunger strike to protest this, but the blacksmith's family sneaks him some rice, which he decides instead of eating molds into a little monster toy, praying to the gods that'll come alive and save everyone. And he probably should have eaten the excess rice he didn't use to sculpt it, cause he dies. Damn good hand sculpting though, he didn't even need a toothpick. So when his body's getting moved, his daughter finds the little monster, and at the wake she accidentally cuts her finger while knitting, and the blood turns into a cartoon and brings the monster to life.
어머나, 저게 살아 움직이네. 아나야, 저거 봐. 저게 바늘을 먹는다. 저게.
So they have a slumber party with their little monster until it escapes and eats all the pots and tools. Turns out he's Pulgasari. The next day, the bandits are about to get executed, but luckily Pulgasari hops in, eats the swords, and terrorizes the executioners. The governor still isn't buying it, but when he sends someone, turns out Pulgasari is just going on a rampage eating whatever iron he can get his hands on. The blacksmith siblings look for him, and surprisingly, he actually looks a lot better than the son of Godzilla. But they lose him as Grandma is now getting beaten. This mobilizes the rebels to take action against the governor. They don't find their imprisoned comrades, but they do take on the government and actually succeed. But now the king's pissed, and now he has to send in his top dog generals. Everyone starts mobilizing and marching, until the rebels hit the government forces with rolling logs and giant boulders.
There you are, now.
I was screaming for dramatic effect.
Well, I was moved by it. And here you are, ready to take on the second boulder. Wow!
With the rebels driving off the king's forces, they celebrate with tree bark. Well, I mean, it is a steady part of a healthy North Korean diet. Then the Battle of Endor happens, and Pol returns just as soon as he started thinking, did you switch to the wrong movie? The rebels put him in front of the attack, and they give all the confiscated weapons from the government to him, and now he's actually kaiju size. So now the general starts realizing Pulgasari is real, and somehow this advisor knows his story. So after Korean Mardi Gras, they capture the blacksmith's daughter. Pulgasari doesn't want to see her hurt, so there's no choice but to get into the comically giant cage they somehow built overnight. Instead of taking control of Pulgasari and using him against the rebels, they decide to make the Korean Wicker Man and burn him alive. So now we have burning Pulgasari before we got Godzilla. He belly flops in the river and takes out the army. And after letting him cool off, we're finally going to attack the king. The humans go in first rather than the kaiju, and the king invents the missile with fireworks taped to spears. They bounce off of Pulgasari, except for his eye, the weak spot. There's significant blood, but no matter, because an hour and 4 minutes in, we see him finally tearing up some buildings. But then these weird-looking dudes start exorcising the blacksmith out of Pulgasari, and they get him buried alive. So the rebel leadership gets chopped down, the government forces celebrate, but the blacksmith's daughter gives him a little bit of blood, so Pulgasari's back up. But the king has another trick. He's got some cannons in funny shapes. But oh yeah, Iron Eater. So Pulgasari brings the palace down, crushing the evil generals and literally stepping on the king. The rebel victory! But Pulgasari is still a big piggy who needs more iron. A lot more iron, and the people are starting to lose their tools and pots again. But the people have no choice to thank their savior. So the blacksmith's daughter has to take it up into her own hands by ringing a big bell, sneaking into it, and letting Pulgasari eat it. But then they realize that they ate the blacksmith's daughter, turn to stone, and frickin' explode. But now the rubble Pulgasari is baby Pulgasari that turns into energy, goes into the blacksmith's daughter, who is still dead but cries. Huh? This is a peculiar film. The kaiju effects are really good, honestly. Pulgasari is a great design, and I feel like they handled his size well, seeing his literal growth throughout the film, becoming more and more of a huge problem, even with some silly faces. Probably because 15 members of Toho's staff were tricked to be in the film. Some pretty notable ones, including Pulgasari being actually played by Satsuma, who played Gigan the Smog Monster and was Big G in the 80s and 90s. Also, the wigs and beards are pretty obviously fake because North Korea has a strict hair standard. Honestly, the film's a lot more average than you would think, with a decent cast of rebels being oppressed by an evil king. You know, obvious parallels between the people of Korea and the capitalist West. But you can also see Pulgasari as something that helped them, but ultimately becomes a burden that's causing people to starve, and is getting far too big and powerful for its own britches, like the Kim dynasty. And luckily John Il didn't realize this, or else that we wouldn't get the Three Ninja sequels, I guess. This was actually the couple's final film for North Korea before they escaped, and the film was banned out of spite until '95.
I'm so lonely, so lonely, so lonely inside real alone.
And in '95 it did get a South Korean release. The film is a huge human rights violation. As North Korea's most well-known movie, honestly, I think this could have been more interesting if it was a straight-up Godzilla ripoff and Pulgasari was made for nuclear weapons. Ignoring the crimes that made this film, 5.5 out of 10. Shinson Oko actually go on to make his own remake in '96 called Galgameth. An iron-eating chimera monster was actually referenced in Monarch Legacy of Monsters, so technically Pulgasari could be canon to the Monsterverse, so this could be a thing. But really what I want to see is Pulgasari versus Young Gary. Yeah, that's not offensive, North and South Korea fighting. But let me know what you thought down below. Hitting hype is very appreciated, as well as hitting the like button and subscribing if you're new.